Well, it's 11 p.m, so morning everyone. Why INTPs suck at navigating the education system. In the 21st century, we use a 19th century school model with 20th century values. There is clearly something wrong with this picture. Yes, for some INTPs, the education system goes swimmingly. I'd say that it's the exception rather than the rule. These reasons probably affect much more than simply how they go through the education system, but this is the specific instance I'm going to use. INTPs are naturally autodidacts who develop their own ways of learning things. Trying to learn on someone else's terms, especially if they disagree with that person's approach, is going to be kind of unbearable for them. A big part of this is following such a rigid schedule as well. An INTP typically would be in their cave, meandering and pondering, jumping between different tasks, dropping and revisiting ideas in a very laid-back way. It's a very casual and loose method of learning, but there is wisdom to it, because it lets ideas percolate and interact. Jumping into action is not their forte by any means. So something as simple as having to move from classroom to classroom and be without their creature comforts puts them in a state that isn't conducive for them to learn. They are not ones to tamely follow the intellectual footprints of others. They would rather think for themselves, even if that meant thinking incorrectly at first, or taking much longer to reach a conclusion. Then there's the fact that the main benefit of the education system, especially at the lower levels, so before university, is to socialize people and allow them to gain those skills that INTPs kind of don't really care about. They probably should care, but generally they don't. Extroverted feeling being their inferior function means it takes a much longer time for it to be developed. So it's kind of redundant, or at the very least underappreciated by them in their youth. If they go to university, then lots of the same problems can persist, but there is definitely a better chance of them enjoying it for a variety of reasons, such as the depth of study and just the prioritizing of intellectual pursuits. If they've picked a course that they're actually passionate about and enjoy, which is a whole another issue, then they're more likely to find like-minded people there. Sadly, I think as a rule, INTPs look forward to being out of the education system so they can finally start learning. Communication. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Okay, so this is slightly unfair, which is better than completely unfair. INTPs don't suck at communication. In fact, they might think that everyone else kind of sucks at it. The problem is that communication is not necessarily what they would like it to be. It's not about accuracy and precision and truth. It's about annoying stuff. To communicate well, you need to listen to people's feelings, regardless of whether those feelings are propped up by anything in the INTP's eyes legitimate. Obviously, the feeler counter to that would be to say that feelings themselves are legitimate and should be respected. You might wonder, if logic is such a powerful thing, and INTPs are supposed to be paragons of it, why would they have such a compromising weakness? Well, ultimately, it's a case of maturity, which is not the same as age. It's entirely possible that a younger INTP could develop the skill, which in turn might make it hard for them to type themselves accurately. It doesn't take much analysis to realize that humans are fundamentally emotional. All of our actions are grounded in it, and it's the scaffolding around which we build our lives, for better or worse. Is it a big ask to be an INTP and regularly contend with people who are highly emotional and prioritize those emotions over reason, rationality, and logic? Of course. But if they can flip that switch and internalize the fact that there are big benefits to approaching life in that way, then you have a very powerful and wise individual, and probably the most powerful form an INTP can take, not least because it takes them a step further to accepting and handling their own emotions better. Getting things done. You'll never plow a field by turning it over in your mind. I know. Who doesn't struggle with this one? INTPs are well suited to being analyzers and thinkers. Is that antithetical to being a person of action? Not necessarily, but they are at odds with each other in some ways. One of the greatest highs for INTPs is to reach that moment of insight, to get to the point where they can say, I understand this, whatever it may be. When you have a situation that requires analysis, insight, then action, by the time INTPs have reached the insight part, they don't really care that much about taking action. It links back to this notion of when something is solved in theory, they don't necessarily feel the need to solve it in reality too. When they know they can do something, actually doing it seems kind of arbitrary. It's not because manifesting something in reality isn't appealing to them. It is. In the same way that all kinds of purely physical pursuits bring them joy too. It's more that those pleasures kind of pale in comparison to the intellectual joys. I would say that this weakness is the one that is best outsourced to other people in the form of collaborative relationships. That duo of TI and NE, in addition to not valuing SE at all, means that INTPs are like ultra intuitives. So they struggle with that sense of detachment and being ungrounded, sometimes in an extreme way. If you're an INTP and you've developed any tactics or strategies to deal with these weaknesses, then let me know down below in the comments. People often say to me that the comment sections are as informative, if not more so, than the videos. So let me just outsource wisdom to you guys. I would also ask you to subscribe and check out the Discord server, but if you're an INTP, then statistically, you've probably already done both.